I need you to go with me for a second. Close your eyes and pretend that we're in the grandest of halls. And standing in front of you is a man with a bundle of joy swaddled in his arms. Now we can see the head of that bundle of joy sticking out of the blanket. The title, brand new. The ink, fresh. The paper so recently put together you can smell it from across the room, right? Yes. We are at the christening of this man's new book. A release party. Or, as some might like to say, a book mitzvah. We are bringing this book into the world to become a man. Now come up and tell us all of the stories about your friends and family that helped you create this book. Tell me about your great aunt who pushed you off of a bike when you were 4 years old. Tell me more about your daughter who was born 3, going on 30 years ago now. And how much of an inspiration it was. But it really has nothing to do with your book because your book is about zombies. But somehow you'll find a way to relate it to that. Because while we're here talking about your book, it's more important that you talk about you. Congratulations. Look, I'm not a marketing person. I'm just a regular peon you met on the streets, a stranger you spoke to at a street market, selling your ideas and your hard work without the emotional attachment of being my mom or my brother or knowing me from childhood or being there when I was born. No. I am a stranger that you called to your table at a street market where other people were selling their goods, and you said, "Here, I have this book, this thing of entertainment, of ideas that I've created, and I want you to come and experience it." By experience, I mean read it. We're not talking like anything really freaky, but it's just, I want you to read it. And I would like to invite you to a party, because I'm about to release another book in this series. Please come to the party and experience more of the book. And I'd like to build fans, come and experience this book with other fans at this party. Well, that sounds like a great time, doesn't it? Except you get to the party, and it's more like a family reunion than a book party. So, disclosure, up front, I have not done a release party of my own yet. I'm going to just give my perspective on it as somebody who's attended a book release party and who is currently planning my own. If there are any experts or authors who have other ideas, or even, obviously I'm a peon, so if you've had experience with a publishing or a book release party, leave it in the description below, but I'm going to give some of my feedback on what it is that I have experienced. So this last weekend, I went to a book release party. The intro was the true story. I met him at a local street market. He sold his book there. He had little fancy printed flyers for his release party for his 4th book in the series and said, "Come and join us." And so I did. And it was more like a family gathering than a book release party. I'm pretty sure everybody there was related to him or was a friend of the family and not him. And I'd say there was about 30 people. In fact, some of the times during the whole event, it felt more like I was crashing a family event than being at a book release party. There is very little actually about the book. So on the flyer that he handed out, there was a thing that said when it started. It had a start time. It had a main program time. And so we were expecting, I went with another person, we were expecting something a little more professional because it was presented in a professional manner. And that's not what we got. We got a couple stories about family or friends in the room. And we've got, it was like a nephew or a son-in-law going up. Not a son-in-law, a nephew or a family friend, like a godson, going up and doing rap over top of a track, which it mostly sounded like he was just singing with his own track. I didn't know that it was his own track until the very end. I thought he was singing somebody else's track, and he kept running out of breath, and it was covering for him because all of the vocals were in there as well, and you really couldn't hear him over the music most of the time. The beat, whatever. and somebody else introduced their book as well because the author who was running this event had invited somebody else to also come and launch their first book. And so that's not a big deal. But here are a couple of suggestions that So it was a lot more of personal stuff. I don't know how to really express the level of cringe that I felt at this thing. But if you are going to do a publishing party or a release party, these are my suggestions from a customer standpoint. Number one, I think it's a good idea if you greet the strangers first as opposed to greeting all of your family and friends. I get that that's a courtesy to do for your family and friends, but if your main reason to putting on a release party is to build the fan base, which is what they said in the when they had the mic at the front of the room, then you need to actually greet the strangers that you've invited, especially when everybody else at your party is a family or a friend. The couples of strangers that have wandered in are going to feel really out of place. Number two, I think it would be really helpful if you put signs out that were pointing to where your party was. So if you're in a public building or a back room even of a bar or something, if you put a sign out front and you want strangers to walk in, like this is if it's a less private event. If you want strangers to walk in to get to introduce new people to your work, if it's an open party, then I would suggest putting signs out that say, hey, book release party for this book, for this author inside, and have maybe even a sign inside the establishment, because we walked in and didn't know where to go. And if you put a sign out on the street, especially since it's a Saturday, if anybody's walking by and they go, I want to do something new today. What's a book release party? Let's go there. Then you've just drawn in new people to introduce new people to your work. Number three, and I cannot believe that this didn't happen, is read from your manuscript. Like, somebody who has had more experience with this, let me know in the comments below. But is this a regular thing that when you have a release party, you don't actually read from your manuscript? And I mean like a release party where you have somebody on the front of the room or on a stage with a microphone who's talking about stuff. I would imagine, in most cases, if you're doing a release party of some kind, I would imagine that you would introduce the book. First, you would do a paragraph to 2 paragraphs of the overall story arc for your series. You know, so-and-so is a detective who works in New York and he follows these kinds of crimes. And then you would go into another paragraph of what this new installment, since it's a series, brings to main character's life. And you should be describing all of these things as if the people in the room have no idea what you're doing. Even if they're all family friends who have heard you talking about it for the last however many months or years you've been working on it, explain it as if we haven't heard it before and in an exciting way. Like, sell me your book. That's why I'm here. Because let me tell you, if you put the sign out and somebody wandered in and now you're telling people about your book, if you can deliver a pitch that's exciting and then you read from your pages, you've just convinced people to go and purchase your book who hadn't purchased your book before. So I would have thought, that's one of the things that I was actually expecting from a pitch party when I went, or not pitch party. That's one of the things that I was expecting from a book release party when I went, especially when there was the program, is at least like 10 to 15 minutes of reading from your manuscript. Number 4, if you publish a schedule for your event, start on time or as close to on time as you possibly can. This event said that it started at 2 and then something else was at 2:30. I think the main event started at 2:30 and the meet and greet started at 2, but we didn't start until almost 3 o'clock. And that's because the author was going around talking to families and friends instead. If you're going to publish a schedule for speaking engagements at your event, stay on schedule. Because you put everybody in a bad mood, specifically people who don't know you, specifically customers and readers who are more interested, you put them in a bad mood by not respecting their time. If you want to do the meet and greet and talk to everybody, do it after the ceremony or get there super early. A side extra that you can do is, if you say we've got a meet and greet from 2 to 2:30 when the event starts, I would suggest setting up a table near the front of the room where people will enter. So as your guests get there, you could say, "Hi, how you doing? Thanks for coming," and have your meet and greet then. Then start your event at the declared time, and then start mingling and going to each of the tables and doing signings as you said you would after the event. If you're not going to stick to a schedule, I would not publish a schedule. A couple of don'ts, and these are going to go kind of hand in hand with the do's. Don't treat your book release party like a family reunion if you invite strangers. So I don't know how typical book release parties go. I don't know how intimate they usually are. I don't know how often it's a bunch of strangers versus having a bunch of family. But to me, when I was there the other day, it felt more like a vanity party for patting your ego and then having all of your family and friends go, "Ooh, good job, you self-published a book, and now you're like this big-time author." Like, it felt like playing pretend. I'm a pretend author, and these are all of my fans. No, I expect to some extent that release parties will have some personal stories because you're connecting with the audience, but I don't know if I expect it so much to go in the way of a wedding reception speech, you know? Number two, don't isolate your customers versus your family. You do have to recognize that you are at a networking event and or a marketing event. If you've invited strangers in who you met at the markets, who you were selling books to, who are outside of your family, you do have actual customers who are not just people who you're related to, who are trying to stay in your good graces. When you invite your friends and family to your events, just don't forget when you've also invited customers. Number three, don't ignore your freaking book. I'm here for your book. Why would you not tell me anything about the book that's being released to get me to buy it? Why would you not tell me anything about the series other than your philosophical background and why ever you decided to do it that way? And even then, that's not going to get me to buy the book if I don't know anything about the book. Number four, don't false advertise. So if you say that it's a book release party, talk about the book. If you say it's going to start at a certain time, have it start at a certain time. If you say you're going to have live music, don't try to use that as a way to entice people into coming like it's some bigger deal when it's really just your nephew or your godson or your own child performing a style of karaoke for the first time in public. That's not what people think when they think live music. And if you say that it is, you're lying. Based on my experiences with this author and this event, I would not go to another one of his events, and I would likely not read his books because he didn't sell me his books while I was at his events, and he didn't respect my time, and he falsely advertised the event that I actually went to. So what's that say about his book? I could be in for anything. And if it's anything like the party that you invited me to, so think before you do a vanity party. And I do want to make that very clear, is I feel like there's a difference between a vanity party and an actual book release party, where a vanity party will make you feel really good about yourself. It's there to boost your ego. It's there to have your friends and your family just there to pat you on the back because you did a good job, whatever. You released a book, haha. But that is much different than presenting something to the world, to new customers, to people who don't even know you. And that is all I have to say there. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Am I way off base? Is this exactly what a release party typically is? Is this your experience with a release party? If this was your experience with a release party, would you purchase the book and would you go to another party? Or would you be like, nah fam, I'm out. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.